In a world where progress never sleeps, one company stands out as the driving force behind infrastructure and energy solutions. Introducing our fuel company and cement producer, where excellence meets efficiency. Jar Oil. The company have 30 filling stations across the country that are all operating, which includes the recently completed Yarambamba and Old Yundum filling stations. And our rates are relatively cheaper than anyone else across the country. Along the years, Jar Oil introduces importation and distribution of cement in their line of business to diversify and strengthen their operations. Are you a cement retailer? At the moment, Jar Oil is the biggest producer and distributor of cement in the country with the most competitive prices in the market. With a focus on sustainability and innovation, we are paving the way for a greener, stronger future. Trust in us to fuel your projects and lay the groundwork for success. We currently produce over 25,200,000 bags per year. As the largest cement producer in the country, Jar Oil also targets to export cement to the neighboring countries like Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry, and others. Join us on our journey to shape a world where every drop of fuel and every bag of cement makes a difference. Together, we can build a brighter tomorrow.
It's Coffee Time with Peter Gomez on West Coast Radio on YouTube. Our program is sponsored by Jar Oil, and we are looking for more partners for this YouTube project. Now, last week, lawyer Usainu Dabo gave his first press conference of the year as Secretary General and leader of the United Democratic Party, UDP. And before taking journalists' questions, he discussed 7 key points centered mainly on the economy. Following the interview or the press conference, one of the party's strategists, Larry Sise, came on 2 Coffee Time programs to further elaborate on the press conference points and also ask questions of the Barrow government's economic policy. Well, Seedy Keita is the Finance and Economic Affairs Minister in that government. He's been keenly following the discussions both at the press conference as well as on Coffee Time, and he's on Coffee Time himself this morning, hopefully with all the answers to the UDP's questions about the Gambian economy. Seedy, welcome back to Coffee Time.
Thank you very much, Peter, and happy Ramadan to our Muslim
Ramadan
brothers.
Kareem. Indeed. Well, you know,
happy Lent to our Christian brothers and
Thank you very much. There's this joke about the Sisekund and Cole that, they're very afraid of this particular month. I don't know about the Ketas.
Well, we do it in grace. It's a time for reflection. Yes.
Are you sure your boss is fasting?
Certainly. And
You're not covering for him?
No. He is a devout Muslim. He prays regularly on time, and he does fast regularly.
Fantastic. Good to have you this morning. I'm sure you have a lot to go through. Where do you want to start?
Well, I thank you very much, Peter, and thank you to your listeners. And we are very pleased as a government to hear the discourse about the budget discussion and the macroeconomic policies of the government, which is very encouraging. It shows more public engagement, and that is very useful. So it is our job to let the general public know we are here to serve them and what policies we put in place to implement the development aspiration. First of all, to begin with, I had, during the budget session, came to this program and explained the rationale of a budget and why a budget is developed. A budget is nothing but a reflection of government priorities. And as you know, those priorities of the government of His Excellency Adama Barrow is to serve the Gambian people. That's why in the 2025 budget has always been dubbed a people-centered budget. Why we do so, the priority allocation is to people-related matters and service delivery for the Gambians to usher in development. So on that note, we will say that the budget for 2025 has very low deficit compared to historic norms, which we have mentioned. And that is a huge achievement, because if you look at the all funds, our deficit is 1.46%. And if you look at only government-funded operation, GLF component is 0.1%, which is quite a remarkable achievement, and is taking into account of the fact that we do not want large budget deficit, which will encroach into borrowing more and more for our development needs. So what we have been hearing in all the discussions, and that's where our priority is, it has always been centered around expenditure. You know, all the comments I have had so far in terms of analyzing the budget is, and the discussions were to me sort of like not contextualized, because you don't discuss budget numbers by only quoting absolute numbers. In terms of comparison, you look at how the trend has been moving over time, what is the share of the budget in terms of the distribution to different sectors, as well as the peer comparison, regional or otherwise. What we've had was only we've given X to this sector, Y to that sector. These sectors are not adequately funded. As such, they are not reflecting our priorities, which is far from the reality. Because to develop a budget, you start with a baseline. And the baseline of any budget is your medium-term expenditure framework. By that, in a layman term, is what resource envelope you have at your disposal that you can distribute to your priority areas, which you believe will usher in the development aspiration you want as a government. And that is done, that cascades into allocation to sectors. And in so doing, you take cognizance of support that you get so as not to crowd out your limited government funds into areas which are very, very simple, which have a lot of donor funds. And as such, that is what formed the budget formulation process. It's very participatory. Sectors are invited, discussions are held. But the feedback we got is that, oh no, the particularly productive sectors, mainly fisheries, agriculture, tourism, youths are underinvested. Unfortunately, this is far from reality, because each of these sectors have access to resource envelope that we as government are aware. For example, the quote on agriculture being only awarded 950. In fact, one of them said 95, just for correction. It's not 95, it's 950 million as a pittance. That's not right. The agricultural sector has more than 5 billion support in form of grants from partners, from IFAD, World Bank, ADB, IDB, OPEC Fund, you name it. So if you have that, and most of the support in the agriculture sector are grant funds. So it's just to implement. And these support are from our development partners. That is why we take that on board, and fully cognizant of that fact, we support the agricultural sector from our limited government resources to the tune of 950 million. And you come to other sectors, like tourism. We were told that, tourism is supposed to be the backbone and is, of course, contributing at least 20% of the GDP. As such, you should put all your firepower there. That's not reality. The tourism sector, the ministry, what you saw in the budget is the allocation to the ministry and the subvented entities under the ministry from government funding. But the tourism ministry is supported by the GT board. The GT board is the operational arm of the tourism sector. The GT board is responsible for the promotion, management, and advertisement of the Gambia as a tourism destination. So the GT board have access to resources through their own levies that they put on the sector. And as of 2023, they have more than 239 million that they raise, for which they have as spendable resources. So that is very limited. That's huge compared to what is given to the ministry proper as a policy arm. The Ministry of Tourism is the policy arm of the sector, but the implementation is done by the GT board. and the resources of the GT board are self-raised from the sector through the tourism levy. And not only that, we have partners in the tourism sector that are supporting us. The World Bank has supported the Gambia to develop tourism to the tune of $68 million over the next 5 years, and that is at various stages of implementation. Just recently, about 2 weeks ago, we just launched, His Excellency the President, Adam Barrow, has launched a 10 million euro YEP tourism project. So you cannot have all these resources into a given sector and then you compete out. Meanwhile, there are certain sectors that are not easily attracted to partners or funders. For example, the security, the office of the president, your foreign services. Those must be funded from your own domestic resources. That is why those sectors tend to have relatively larger amount of the domestic resources than sectors which have access to partner support. Then the third sector that was mentioned as not reflecting the priorities that we deem as a government is the youth sector. And this sector is another area where it is not the ministry that is implementing the youth and sports policy operation. The ministry is focused on the policy aspect. Operations are in the area of sports, different sports fraternities, as well as the different sport like the GFF, the football, the basketball federation. Those are the operational arm, and these are supported. And the youth and sports as a ministry is supported by a youth and sports levy, which is levied on the GSMs. And as we speak, the average envelope accessible to those raised from the youth fund is about 90 million annually. So these are outside budgets. So when government is formulating a budget, it is not only what you see in the budget document that is the resource envelope available to that sector. And of course, we believe that being in the country, they know how this mechanism work, because we all know how government work. But our doors are open, and the different ministries are open for consultation and to really give frank feedback on those. So these are some of the issues that we believe are deemed clarifying. And again, I'll come back to say the government of His Excellency Adam Barrow is focused on developing the country and the people. And that's why if you look at our personnel emoluments, I mean, I cannot put the ranking of where we do stand as a country, but in spite of all the economic challenges in the region and globally, in the last 8 years, remuneration of the core civil servants have increased by 110%.
Oh, wow.
In 2019, 50%. In 2022, 30%. In 2025, another 30%. And in fact, the 2025 salary increase is not across the board, but rather has been graduated. And we came up with a floor of minimum $6,000 per month. No government civil servant is paid less than $6,000 monthly.
Including drivers?
Every messenger. So long as you are in the government payroll, you are not below 6,000.
Oh, that's very good.
And the salary increase, the lower grades had increases when you take into account more than 75%. So we cascade it according to the grade in order to address the issue of equity. Mm-hmm. So these are, and again, infrastructure. It is, people keep harping, why the emphasis on infrastructure by His Excellency Adam Barrow? It is empirically established. For every dollar you invest in infrastructure, the economic return and social returns are $4 extra. It's one of the highest rewarding investment. And the Gambia has a huge infrastructure deficit, and why so? Traditionally in the past, our infrastructure was left to the development partners. All development on roads, that's why it was. If you look at the Lamenkoto Pasamas, it took decades for it to be completed due to funding issues, partners. But the president, in his wisdom, has deemed it necessary that, look, we have to invest in our own development, and that is develop the infrastructure from government funds. And this is why, if you see, we are all beneficiaries of what it takes to drive on Batting Harding Highway. It has eased traffic congestion. If you look at the real estate development along that corridor, we've all seen buildings coming up which were which were not here before. So these are some of the things that we deem to clarify, just to make the people aware. So it is not that we are not focused on priority sectors, but those priority sectors have alternative funding sources. That's why government deem it necessary not to crowd out these partners. These are called partners in development. So if you have a partner that is helping you, why crowd out your limited resources when somebody can help you? And these are not, most of these sectors that I'm talking about are not financed by loans, principally. Most of the support in these sectors are grant funds. So that is why we believe to just look at the budget number and comment in abstract terms leaves much room for improvement in this.
But the question has to be asked, Seedy.
Yes.
Do you always get the grant funds that are promised, whatever ministry or department or agency of government?
Well, these are linked to implementation. And that's why implementation is being looked upon seriously by government. As the implementation expedites, it is expedited more funds. In fact, one sector to quote here is the health sector, where the rapid implementation of the grants has enabled the World Bank to give additional funding to the sector. Because the partners operate on what do we call performance-based allocation system. The more you implement, the more resource envelope you'll have access to, because it shows that you are implementing the development for which you are set out to do, and resources are supposed to be directed to performers. Yeah. So we are improving and the implementation rate. And just again, I do hear that, even the budget support were not forthcoming. No, just for the information of the audience.
I was going to say,
I went to the National Assembly in August, in September thereabout, and said the budget implementation was slacked down because partner support as envisaged in the budget, in the form of budget support, have yet to arrive. And that was what was the case at the time. But we received all the budget support as of last year in the budget by December. So it depends on the timing, because these budget supports are linked to triggers, are linked to results. So as those results are implemented and your conditions for the budget supports are realized, then disbursement follow. So some of these do take time, and that's why it's not on day one in the budget that you'll have a budget support in the bank account waiting for you. Most of them are linked to reforms, and these reforms are long-lasting, and they are for the betterment of the economy and the country at large. So just for clarity, there was no budget support. In fact, last year, we had extra $10 million from the World Bank, over and above what we budgeted in the form of budget support, because we plead with them for the social package of GAMTEL and GAMCEL staff, which they rise to our request. So we received $10 million extra. So just to show that managing an economy is like jigsaw puzzle, you move one block at a time.
In a world where progress never sleeps, one company stands out as the driving force behind infrastructure and energy solutions. Introducing our fuel company and cement producer, where excellence meets efficiency. Jar Oil. The company have 30 filling stations across the country that are all operating, which includes the recently completed Yarambamba and Old Yundum filling stations. And our rates are relatively cheaper than anyone else across the country. Along the years, Jar Oil introduces importation and distribution of cement in their line of business to diversify and strengthen their operations. Are you a cement retailer? At the moment, Jar Oil is the biggest producer and distributor of cement in the country with the most competitive prices in the market. With a focus on sustainability and innovation, we are paving the way for a greener, stronger future. Trust in us to fuel your projects and lay the groundwork for success. We currently produce over 25,200,000 bags per year. As the largest cement producer in the country, Jaha Oil also target to export cement to the neighboring countries like Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry, and others. Join us on our journey to shape a world where every drop of fuel and every bag of cement makes a difference. Together, we can build a brighter tomorrow.
It's interesting you mentioned Gamtel and Gamcel because these are institutions that came up during the press conference of the UDP. So how did that 10 million, extra 10 million, help the institution?
Well, no, that is the social package because we all know Gamtel and Gamcel are going through reforms. And one of the identified causes of the challenges of those two companies are the human resource base. It was deemed that there are more people than it needs. And if you look at the number of staff counts compared to the comparative in the private sector, we all know that the head count are. So the social package will come and address that so as that the parting Gambians in there will be given a decent golden handshake. That's the purpose of those projects.
But financially, how are these institutions? They are struggling, yes, but they are still around. And the reason I ask is I owed some money by Gamcel, which I would like to recover ASAP.
I can put on record, this is where managing public enterprises has been a challenge for the government. And I think this is not just Gamtel and Gamcel. We have to look at the economic history of this country and look at things quietly and say them as they are. If you look at our public enterprises, we did not, as a country, have a very good track record. If you look at the number of public enterprises that has collapsed over the years, and this collapse had led to huge economic potential loss. I can start by naming some of them, which the audience will be able to relate with.
Sure.
GPMB, it was performing very well. It collapsed. NTC, Commercial and Development Bank, Agricultural Development Bank, Livestock Marketing Board. Then you have the GPTC, then on and on and on and on. So if you look, it's not that when a public enterprises go underwater, but is the opportunity lost? So it's time we look at, that's why we have created a state-owned enterprise commission to put a laser focus on how these enterprises are managed. As we speak, Gamcel, even government has to come and bail out the salary of Gamcel for the last 2 months. We, from the limited resources...
So they're still in bad shape?
Well, of course, that's why restructuring is being done.
I shouldn't go knocking on the door.
No. It's a work in progress, and we are aware. And I do hear, like to say, we're selling these public assets. No, there is no public asset that is sold in closed doors, behind closed doors. There is no, all these processes are...
But public assets have been sold publicly, have they?
Publicly.
Okay.
It depends on whether you or anybody who's making that comment has the right authorities. Because no public assets can be sold privately because it is owned by the population. But there's a process. You advertise it, you invite bids are open, evaluated, and the best responsive bidder is the one who takes them.
Is that what happened in the case of Megabank? It came up for, focus
yes,
in the press
in
conference.
fact, for the interest, this Megabank issue has been an issue going on. And I was surprised that in this day and age, people can fathom or think that a whole government can sell a whole bank that is owned by the state on the carpet.
Is that not what you did, the government?
Of course not. How would we do that? Look, government has certain ethos. It's a public asset. As such, whatever you do with that, the public have the right to know. The fact that a segment of society or an individual of society does not know how the transaction was done is no answer to the fact that it was done privately. For the case of Megabank, this has been widely debated, discussed, but we will tell you, even one of the audience said that, he came to this studio and said in 2022, Megabank is being sold, and it was indeed when we announced sold in 2022. For purpose of records, that's not correct. Megabank transaction closed in 2023. And for the case of Megabank, if you will allow me to give the audience a detailed rundown of events leading to the
It's only quarter past
Megabank.
9.
Yes. The Central Bank of the Gambia, acting in accordance with an order of the High Court, see copy attached. These copies have all been lodged at the National Assembly, because the answer I'm reading out to you is an answer I have responded on the floor of the National Assembly, and all the reference annexures have been compiled and submitted to the National Assembly. The court order annex mark CBG1 reorganized the Keystone Bank Limited and obtained approval from the Register of Companies to change the name to Mega Bank Limited. Also, that approval was attached as an annexure pursuant to the reorganization plan approved by the High Court. This reorganization plan was court approved. It is not a government-imposed reorganization. See attached exhibit and mark CBG3. CBG made several previous attempts to exit from the bank, but to no avail. And I think it's very worth noting that it is not right for the central bank, who is the regulator, to be running a bank.
Yeah.
And that's why central bank literally took over to nurse the institution, prepare it and offload it. And exit from the mega bank, it is within that context that as a regulator, when banks go under, you bail them out, restructure them, and this is not unique to Gambia. It has happened everywhere. During the financial crisis, all US, UK, they all bail out their banks that were insolvent. However, the exit process gained traction following the coming into office in October 2020 of the current governor, because previous attempts were made, but only when Governor Boasedi came on board did the real exit mechanism
gain traction,
momentum.
Yeah.
The new management of the central bank exhibited a strong resolve to dispose of the institution through services of an approved consultant, appointed consultant. It is not the central bank themselves that went out to do the sale. They have made bids to potential consultants who can be able to market this. And in September 2021, Central Bank approved GPPA, and the approval authority of the GPPA has been also submitted to appoint DT Associates to provide the sell-side advisory services on the privatization or disposal of the mega bank, following a competitive bidding process which attracted the following: Sahel Investment Management, Accord Associates, and A&A and Co. Following and I think A&A Co. should be very familiar to the terrain that are making the accusation that it was a private transaction.
That's a dig at UDP.
Well, following an evaluation of the mega bank, DT Associates ran a competitive bidding process. And again, see copy of the newspaper advertisement, exhibit and marked as CBG5 for the sale of mega bank in 2021, and received bids from the following five. 1. Access Bank Gambia Limited, Vista Group Holdings, VFD Group PLC, Yes Brazil Bank, Afro Board Investment, GLM Investment Consulting and Real Estate, SALRL. This bidding process resulted in the selection of the most responsive bidder, which happened to have been Vista Group Holding, the current shareholder of Vista Bank Gambia Limited. Through an independent assessment of the institution, the interested bidders, that is the Vista Group, offered to pay 900 million instead of 600 million. We heard that the bank was sold for 600 million. For correction, it is 900 at the time, the first offer, for the purchase of Mega Bank, then equivalent to $15 million. After drafting and finalization of a share purchase agreement between the potential buyer, that is the Vista Holding and the Central Bank, which was mediated by the consultant DT Associates, Central Bank communicated its acceptance of the negotiated price of 900 million via a letter dated November 23, 2022. See Exhibit So. These are all exhibits that have been presented. And the following conditions were agreed upon. 1. The payment of the full amount of 900 must be made by the bidder prior to the signing of the share purchase agreement, that the deadline for the payment was December 15, 2022. Failing which, the transaction will be null and void. So we had given the deadline for the sale to be completed in December 2022. Unfortunately, both conditions were breached by the potential buyer, that is the Vista Group, when they took the following steps, and hence rendering the transaction void. They made an initial payment of $5 million, which was received on December 30th, 2022. They made additional payment of $2.5 million. The central bank was informed through the consultant that the terms of the contract were varied by the potential buyer, that is the Vista Group, due to their decision to make 3 installment payments for the institution, starting with $5 million and $2.5 million. Records are available at the central bank to show that funds received all have been returned to the senders due to the void contract. However, the return of funds took a while due to the need to address concerns raised by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. While this was taking place, central bank was mindful not to open a new tender process until that previous transaction was fully determined. It was after that the DT consultant was instructed to commence another bidding process with a view to identifying a new buyer. DT Associates then ran a second bidding process, and this copy of the advertisement for the second bidding was also submitted for the sale of Megabank, and this attracted bids from the following: KM Holding Limited, Master Financial Group, and Oakwood Africa Investment Limited. After careful review of the submitted bid, DT Associates recommended to the central bank to explore concluding transaction for the sale of 100% equity in the Mega Bank with KM Holding, and the annexure of that transaction was also given. Mm-hmm. After the protracted negotiation, central bank, in a letter dated June 12, 2023, and not 2022, was informed KM Holding of their successful tender for the purchase of 100% of Mega Bank Limited. Subsequently, KM Holding and Central Bank signed a share purchase agreement bearing serial number 847/2023 MID. That was also attached, in which KM Holding Limited agreed to pay $15,250,000, which is an improvement of $250,000 over the previous offer of $15 million, and far in excess of both the initial $900,000 as well as the $600,000 that was alleged to have been the sale price. So this is how Megabank was sold. The advertisements were done, consultants were hired, a transparent process was conducted, GPPA was involved to identify the procurement of the consultant to do the procurement. Mm-hmm. So we must be very aware that whatever government does, it has to be in the public space, and there are laws and procedures guiding that. Mm-hmm. So it will, those are open to be asked, but this is the response I have given, and these responses are backed by facts, as mentioned in the various exhibits. Mm-hmm. So to say that government sold Mega Bank under the wraps or under the carpet is far from the reality.
And KM, they are from what country?
Well, KM is an investment company. I don't know their designated country. I am not part of the transaction. I am just relaying how the transaction was conducted. Okay. It's an international financial holding company.
Okay. And do you know if the bank is doing business? Is Mega Bank active, or are they still restructuring? And
well, once we have exited as a government, the rest is a private matter.
Okay.
And we are not privy to that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.